Some iconic horror movies were inspired by events that actually happened. It's worth seeing how the true stories change and how they stay the same. While true stories are generally the realm of prestigious drama movies, some have also served as the inspiration for a surprising number of iconic horror movies. Cinema has been obsessed with dramatizations of real events since the earliest days of the medium. But in the cases of most, their real-life connections are made plain in the movies themselves. Here are 7 horror movies based true story. 7. Final Destination 2000. Each Final Destination installment follows the similar premise of a group of people who, following a premonition, manage to escape death in a random disaster only for death to come for them in gruesome and elaborate ways. While the plot device leads to some absurd deaths, franchise creator Jeffrey Reddick explains that the idea for the original film was based on a real news story. Reddick recalls, via Collider, reading about a woman who narrowly avoided a plane crash after a loved one called and encouraged her to switch flights. The concept of a premonition of a plane crash would end up being the basis for Final Destination. 6. Open Water 2003. One of the simplest and most haunting horror concepts was inspired by a real case. The film Open Water, about a couple who find themselves stranded in the middle of the ocean after their scuba boat leaves without them, is based on the real story of married couple Tom and Eileen Lonergan, who went missing at sea after being stranded for 48 hours. While it's impossible to know exactly what happened to the Lonergans in that time, the vivid, claustrophobic Open Water dramatizes the story of a fictional couple who struggle against sharks, dehydration, and the myriad horrors of the open sea. 5. The Conjuring 2013. While many aspects of the plot are embellished for dramatic effect, the 2013 haunted house film The Conjuring is based on the reportedly true accounts of Ed and Lorraine Warren's investigation of a haunted farmhouse in Rhode Island. The real Warrens' accounts of levitating furniture, smells of rotting flesh, and attempts to communicate with the spirits are all represented in the film via USA Today. Lorraine Warren even consulted on the production. However, many of the claims the Warrens made throughout their career are disputed, leaving it up to the viewer how much of The Conjuring's haunting can be taken as fact. 4. Poltergeist 1982. Like The Conjuring, Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist is a horror movie inspired by a supposedly true account of a haunted house. The Herman House of Long Island, New York became a national sensation in 1958 when the Herman family began to experience unexplained occurrences such as bottles being uncapped and spilled, furniture being moved, and unexplained noises. Via Nerdist, Poltergeist ran with the story to tell the fictional tale of a suburban family whose house is plagued by spirits. While the film includes the details of moving furniture and bizarre noises, it takes things much further, with spectral hands, moving skeletons, and even child-swallowing portals coming into play. 3. Ravenios 1999. The underrated 90s horror film Ravenous tells the story of a remote 19th century military outpost terrorized by an insane cannibal. The plot is inspired by numerous real stories of parties of settlers driven to cannibalism by the savage conditions of the untamed American wilds. Most prominently, the film is based on the notorious story of the Donner Party who turned to cannibalism after finding themselves trapped in the California mountains, and the account of Alfred Packer, a prospector who likewise began to eat his fellow party members after becoming lost in the Rockies. 2. The Strangers 2008. The 2008 indie hit The Strangers was inspired by real crimes. The film, while light on plot, nonetheless succeeds at representing the primal fear of a seemingly motiveless home invasion. According to director and writer Brian Bertino, the movie was inspired by 3 real home invasion stories. The first is the infamous Helter Skelter murders, wherein a cult directed by Charles Manson murdered actress Sharon Tate in her own home. The second is the 1981 Ketty Cabin murders, which saw a mother and 3 children murdered by an unknown killer. The third is Bertino's own childhood memory of being home alone and narrowly avoiding a home invasion robbery. 1. Screams 1996. Considering Scream's history of murderers inspired by film and TV, it seems fitting that screenwriter Kevin Williamson was moved to write the original film after watching a TV documentary about a serial killer. Daniel Rawlings, aka the Gainesville Ripper, via Collider, inflicted a 4-day murder spree on several Florida college students in 1990. Williamson seems to have woven several elements of Rawlings' story into Scream. The murders were preceded by a seemingly unconnected killing the year prior. The carnage was mostly focused on a group of young people. And Rawlings had a tendency to pose his victims in anticipation of their discovery, just like Casey Becker in Scream.